It rises every morning, and so do we. With fresh perspectives and innovative ideas, we grow trust for our clients in food and agriculture, in their products, processes, people, and brands. It's all we do, and we do it like no one else can. It's a new day in food and agriculture, with new challenges and bright possibilities. When you need someone you can count on, look east.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review, or shall I say Cleveland Week in Review this week. Phil Brasher and I are here at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio, where the Republican Party was set to unify and rally around its presidential candidate, Donald Trump. They have rallied around the presidential candidate in some parts. They have not unified behind that presidential candidate, and perhaps no better evidence of that than the speech given by Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, a former presidential nominee opponent of Donald Trump. Many were expecting an endorsement. That endorsement never came. And Phil, clear signs. Yes, there are a lot of delegates here that have decided to rally behind presidential nominee Donald Trump, as evidenced by the boos that Senator Ted Cruz received, but still a lot of work to do if they're going to unify this Republican Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And to win this election, certainly Donald Trump, it's certainly winnable for Donald Trump. But they really have to unify the Republican base, and then obviously reach out, which they know that, and reach out to those independents, those Reagan Democrats out there in the Midwest, states like Ohio, where we are, and even reaching out to states like Iowa, farm country, very much a swing state, and very much in play this year.
And that outreach is going to be critical because, as a political commentator told me in about January or February, keep in mind he said this about 5 or 6 months ago. He said the people that aren't voting for Donald Trump, it's not because they don't know who he is. And that statement still rings true today. So, and it appears, based on comments that he has made and based on comments of people that are surrogates speaking on his behalf at the convention, that he's not changing the path that got him here. He's sticking behind those same policy points that have gotten him to the point where this support that he's built up.
Right, and that's important for agriculture. There's a lot of nervousness. We talked to somebody from one of the commodity groups here this week, and he said, "Oh, we're not nervous, we're scared." The way he talks about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but it's like the legendary football coach Darrell Royal said, "You dance with who brung you," and we've talked to people close to Trump on agricultural policy, and they have made pretty clear he's not going to budge off his criticism of the TPP, of the North American Free Trade Agreement in China, and on the immigration issue, which is also something that gives a lot of producers concern, because those were critical issues for winning in primaries in the Midwest and other states, and they really see the trade issue in particular as critical to winning states like Pennsylvania and again Ohio.
Now, at this particular event, the big news for folks like Phil and I that are here to cover the agricultural policy implications of this event, the big news for us isn't usually made on the main stage. It requires a little bit more legwork, maybe attending some events and talking to some folks and really digging to the core of what agriculture is going to get out of this election. And Phil, one of those events that we both attended was called the Great American Farm Luncheon, which was held Wednesday here in Cleveland. A lot of agricultural groups came out in support of that event, a lot of folks sponsoring tables and whatnot, and some news came out of there about an agricultural backing kind of emerging for Donald Trump.
Right. Well, we knew this was going on for a while. There was a conference call a couple of weeks ago, about 15 or 20 people on, with Sam Clovis, who's a senior policy advisor out of Iowa, once worked for the Governor Rick Perry's campaign, now has been working with Donald Trump. He also has the title of national co-chair. He is heading up this agricultural effort. Again, had a conference call a couple of weeks ago with a number of folks in agribusiness. Actually announced from the stage that they are launching this advisory council. The chairman who spoke at the luncheon was Charles W. Herbster. He's a major Angus breeder, and also owns a company called Conklin, which is an agribusiness and roofing material manufacturer. Herbster introduced that concept to the crowd, and also talked a bit about Trump himself. He's a personal friend of Trump going back about 10 years. Talked a bit about Trump and addressed some of those issues that are of concern to the group that was there.
Now, Phil and I had a chance to sit down with some folks that are really going to be keying this effort for agricultural groups rallying behind Trump, and here's a few excerpts from that interview.
I've had the opportunity to know Donald Trump and his family for a little over a decade. I'm truly committed to making sure that we get him elected in November. A Hillary Clinton presidency is unacceptable, not only to agriculture, but to small business and to America in general. And so it's excited to be a part of this team. We've been working with Dr. Sam Clovis since February, and he's helping us put together a team that we're going to be unveiling in probably the next week to 10 days. And there's just some exciting people all across the country that's going to be joining the agricultural team. But I think it's important to realize that when we talk about agriculture today, we're not talking just about farming. We're talking about small communities. We're talking about manufacturing. We're talking about something that touches every state in the United States. So it's more than just maybe raising corn or raising soybeans. And we are the breadbasket of the world. And as we look at what the population is going to do over the next 20 to 30 years, one thing Donald Trump understands, certainly we understand as farmers, and I know the people that's going to be joining this committee, is that food security is national security.
As governor of Nebraska, I went on 12 international trade missions from Cuba to China. We sold Nebraska products all over the world, so I know how important trade is to agriculture. However, in the same breath, as someone who was the governor of an ag state, talked to governors of large industrial states, and they will tell you that while ag was favored in trade relations in these trade deals, their manufacturing sector and other sectors of their economy weren't. And what Donald Trump is saying, and it's resonating, for example, in Ohio and Pennsylvania, I care about having a trade deal that's good for all sectors of our economy. So when he says he's for fair trade, he's also for free trade, but he puts more emphasis on the fair side. And so he's going to make sure that every American has the opportunity for a job here in our country. So I want our agriculture leaders to understand he's going to continue to favor trade that promotes agriculture, that favors the agriculture industry, but we want to make sure the other industries that are part of our economy that are crucial to the growth of America are also treated equally as favorably. We've got the leaders of both major political parties, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, saying they don't support the Trans-Pacific Partnership right now. Senator Rob Portman, who used to be the trade representative from Ohio, has said we need to take another look at it. So really, there's no support for the trade deal, the TPP agreement that President Obama negotiated. Let's get Donald Trump in there and let him renegotiate a deal that's good for agriculture, good for manufacturing, and all parts of our economy. That's what Donald Trump is saying.
But here's what we know if we really understand how a president's going to get elected on the Republican ticket. We have to have all the Romney states, plus we have to have Pennsylvania and Florida and Ohio. And that's what it's going to take to make sure that we win in November.
So some interesting thoughts from that interview. And Phil, if Donald Trump is going to be able to call himself President Donald Trump here in the beginning of January, the rural swing states are really going to play a heavy role in a potential victory for him.
Well, it's certainly true, and they know this. Again, talking to Sam Clovis, who's a senior policy advisor, I talked to him for a good bit while we were here. He said, yes, we know that to win states like Iowa, to some extent Ohio, and to some extent Pennsylvania, we've got to run up the score and have big margins in the rural areas and small towns. Republicans have to do that. It's certainly true in Iowa, and it's to a lesser extent true in other states. That's part of the effort here part of it's to raise money from agribusiness, but part of it is to address some of these concerns of agriculture and get agriculture and and rural America in general behind the Trump campaign and address some of the concerns that there are out there in the country about Donald Trump.
So Phil, with the effort that was announced here this week, what can we expect as kind of a timeline and maybe a group of people that might be involved here in this effort going forward?
Well, Clovis said they would like to roll out and release the list. He called it an all-star cast of names of leaders in agribusiness by the first week in August. And he's also promising a policy paper, probably just broad principles, not into details, but general principles on ag policy, also by the first week of August. We'll see. That's it's a tall order, but a lot of work is going on as we speak.
So a lot of things going on here at this convention, kind of behind the scenes, as we mentioned, not a whole lot of stuff up front and center, agriculturally speaking, at this particular convention.
We did have an avocado farmer.
We did have an avocado farmer and former soap opera actress take the stage and talk about her avocado farm. So agriculture did make its way to the main stage. I stand corrected, and I apologize to the viewers of this fine program. But I think that's going to wrap it up for the news that we've got out of this particular week. Just kind of a programming notes at the end of this week. I'm going to be waving goodbye to Phil Brasher, and he'll be joining Agri-Pulse editor and publisher Sarah Wyant in Philadelphia next week for the Democratic National Convention, keeping all of you up to date with the news and information and notes coming out of that particular event, much as we did this week in Cleveland. And we certainly appreciate all of the followers that we've gained, and we appreciate the patronage that you've given our coverage of this particular convention. And I can speak for Phil and Sarah when they say they're both looking forward to the event next week. But I think that's going to do it for coverage of this particular convention. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.